Right. So we are going to be going ahead and recording all of this so that we can let everybody see it. So once again, today we are going to be talking about daily log activities in FirePro, how to use the daily log, how to track them, how to do a bunch of daily log automation. I'm going to start off with by talking about the daily log and its search functions in general. And some of the ability to set up some automated time ranges and searches that might make things a little faster and smoother. Then we'll talk about how to create daily log items specifically, the details about what goes into them. Okay, so we're there. So there is something going on. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm just going to work with Amanda here for a sec. So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the different ways that you can log information on a daily log item. That's going to include detailed attendance information, attaching apparatus and inventory, putting in checklists, building reminders off of daily log items. We're also going to talk about the pass on feature in daily log, which is used to identify specific daily log items and highlight them for other people. And then we can talk a bit about the scheduler, about integrated checklists, and then review various different daily log reports that are available. So those are going to be the things we cover. Can people see the stuff that's up on my screen with FirePro right now? I know I've had some screen sharing weirdness happen before. Should be able to see copy of FirePro up on the screen. Okay. All right. So when we are working in the daily log module, the daily log fundamentally is designed to be an aggregator module. The audio settings. Sorry, I'm just trying to get somebody's audio working. Audio settings. Icon in Zoom. All right. So when we are thinking about the daily log is designed to pull information in from a lot of other modules in FirePro. So if I look in the daily log and I look at any time period where I've had any other activities that happen, if we enter inspections, incidents, training records, certifications, those all appear. We'll just try and log out. And those all appear in the daily log automatically. So they're going to populate in the daily log module. These items that we can see with the type that have a little asterisk next to them, that indicates that they are all records that have been created in other modules that are being displayed on the daily log so that we can see that information from various different places. For example, if I double click on one of those items, I can pull up the relevant inspection, for example. And how they're organized is going to depend a little bit on whether you're using start times in some of these items. If we're not, so for example, we can see with certificates or this particular version of inspections or training records, we're just documenting in this case. In this case, we can just see that there's just a date associated with this record. The date is only going to display as a standard 000 start time on here if you're not using start times. It's not a problem if you're doing it. It just means things will be a little less detailed for some specific types of items. We can see, though, that for some of the daily log items, we do actually have a start time assorted or entered so that that will display with the exact start time. And start and end times are actually going to get a little bit important when we start to talk about how to use the daily log to display shift information. So when I'm looking at the daily log, I have some standard search functions that are available to me. I can search by date range for different activities. I can also search for activities by specific station, by specific squad if I want to. I can also filter between all types of activities or specific daily log types of activities. Um, and I can also use the chosen types function to pick exact specific types of activities that I want to see in the daily log. So this is going to let me control exactly what type of items appear in my log when I am generating it. I also have the ability to include pass-ons. We're going to talk about pass-ons in a little bit. And I can also track status. And I have this item called show scheduled items. This is going to let me show items that I have created automatically using the scheduler. This is going to be a handy tool if we want to automate some information about things that need to happen. So when I am working in the daily log, in many cases, departments that do shift-based work like to use the daily log because it creates current lists of to-do activities or current shift activities. So one of the first things that you want to do if you want to use the daily log as a primarily shift-based tool is set up your shifts in the system. And what I mean by that is, say, for example, the department has a day shift and a night shift. What we can do is go to the setup menu under the option called custom settings, go to other, and under other, there's a tab called daily shifts. So in the daily shifts, what I can actually do is I can set the start and end time of my shifts over the course of the day. I can have several different shifts if I want to. I can also start what we call a day start time, but the start time and end time of the shifts is what the daily log is going to use really often. So if I've set a start and end time for those shifts, then in the daily log, I can use the this shift, last shift, next shift search parameters to quickly pull up the current shift as a search function. So when I've selected this shift, we can see it's got the current day from 0800 to 1600. It'll just automatically pull up anything that has happened during the time period of that standard shift. And this is something that you can set as a default if you're using your saved searches. So I could, rather than have a saved search for this week, I can use a saved search and say, show me the current shift as a saved search. And once that is saved, I can set that as a default. So that means that whenever I go into the daily log or an officer goes into the daily log, it'll automatically pop the current shift up. And this is useful for just seeing what has happened on the shift so far, for monitoring activities over the course of a shift, but also can be really important when we start to tie in the scheduler, where I deal with what we would call scheduled items. You could also, in this context with saved searches, filter down the shift to only display certain types of information related to different daily log activities or different types of actions that we're doing in the department that are just relevant to what's happening or to what the current officer, excuse me. Sorry, still doing a little COVID here. So this is gonna let me set up individual users so they have just the relevant information that they want to display on the daily log. What we can also do is we can customize exactly how the daily log works a fair bit. So if I go into the setup menu under custom settings, there's a tab here called daily log, which is going to control a fair bit of information about how the log actually works. First of all is that there's a number of different custom fields that we can have for the daily log. These are, various different types of drop-down lists or numbers. We can also set things like specific mandatory information that has to be filled out on different types of daily log activities. We can also set some reports so that they have officer signature sections. This is often when we're doing an end of shift summary report out of the system. And we do have the ability to do things like having duplicates for personnel. That would be if you have a personnel doing multiple different things over the course of a single daily log entry. So we're going to see how all these different types of customizations work when we're in the daily log. So when I am working in the daily log, one of the things that I am going to frequently be doing is creating a new daily log entry. And this is done like most modules in FirePro with the green plus button. And this is going to create one of these new daily log files. So when I set up a daily log file, generally speaking, it's going to default to the current time date with the begin time. And I could adjust this if I wanted to. And it also has a section for time date for end. Sometimes the end is not used if we're dealing with a task that maybe is open-ended or something like that. We do also have the ability to have a station assigned to this. Because daily log activities and daily log filtering can be done by station at a fundamental level, it means that if you have multiple stations and officers at those stations, those officers can be set up so that they just see their own station stuff in the daily log when they're searching, as opposed to seeing stuff from various different stations. When I actually build custom daily log entries, I have a type and a subtype function. So what this lets me actually do is create a whole bunch of different types of activities I might have in the daily log. And for each type of activity, I can have a subtype, which might have a whole bunch of other different types of activities in it. So the daily log can be really, really detailed in terms of documenting exactly what kind of activities that you're doing. And you're going to be able to generate really detailed time reports out of it, which break down how much time people are spending on each one of these activities, if that's something that you want to get out of it. So in this case, we could say I'm going to set up a custom truck check item. I have an officer in charge list. This officer in charge list works just like the other officer lists in FirePro, where the permission is set to be on this list is set from the personnel module. So if I look at a personnel record, I can go in and under the employment officer tab, there is a daily log officer checkbox. So that's going to determine if someone can be an officer in charge of a daily log activity. This is, again, still filtered by station and other permissions, but that's where that officer information for daily log comes from. So what I can do with a daily log activity is, first of all, I can attach personnel to it just like I can in any other kind of department activity, which members of the department are present, for example. This does also have those same filtering functions. So I can filter for specific crews, for example, when I'm adding people to make it a little easier to put information in. What I can also do with individual attendance is I can have individualized start and end times for people if I want to do that. And I can have different subtypes of activities attached to each individual person. This is most useful in the context of creating a single daily log event for a time period, a task set during the day, and you might want to have several people attached to it, but they are on slightly different tasks in terms of this overall entry. You can also attach trucks to the daily log if you want to have apparatus times associated with start and end times. You can also assign specific inventory items to the daily log if you are wanting to track that specific pieces of gear were used for these logged activities, just tracking that items are used. Daily log items can also have checklists associated with them. So if you have scheduled checklists, then you can add those lists directly. I created a very simple checklist here, and you can just assign a checklist directly to the daily log. This is often if there's a checklist-based task that's associated with the log item. We're also going to talk a bit about how to schedule those so that they're automated and they just pop up for you as part of the standard. Here's what needs to happen set. Like other records, daily log items can have pictures and links associated with them. Now, another tool that's available in the daily log, in addition to the standard notes, so this is going to be standard notes section, is that we do have the ability to create reminders right off of a daily log item. So if there's an item that has generated a relevant reminder, you can put in some notes about that, put in the date that this reminder might be due, say the 27th, and put in a notify date of today. And once you save that, those log items are going to start to pop. If I just maximize this and get my notice date stuff up, I can see it has populated a relevant reminder from the daily log right off the bat. So you can flow stuff right from the log straight into the reminders. If you want to do something like that, you can also clear these reminders right from the log item. So you don't need the reminder anymore, clear it right off. What you can also do with daily log items is that you can flag specific items as what we call a pass-on report. So flagging something as a pass-on means that this daily log item will, first of all, if I look under my daily log list, it'll be highlighted in red. So it's going to show as a high priority item in red. What it'll also do is for any other user who has permission to see this record, this pass on item will appear for them regardless of the time that they select. So for example, if I'm in a current shift and I identify that this is a pass on item, the person who comes in for the next shift will see the pass on item as a highlighted activity if they have elected to see pass ons. And when you're dealing with a pass on item, if you get to the point where, okay, the notes about this item, it could be a notification, for example, that there's a piece of equipment that's damaged on a truck that they have to be aware of, or they need to do something. Once that's dealt with, the person who deals with it can just click on the pending tab. That will put in an end time for the pass on, and it will update the information and close the pass on. So when I look next, I won't see it. I will still see the original item, which was created, but it won't require the pass on information that tracks and highlights this particular item. So it gives you a way of highlighting a specific daily log item that you will then sort of pass on to anybody else who's looking in the module and operating. So another really important tool for the daily log is that you can use the integrated scheduler to build a bunch of automated tasks that can be then brought up as part of a standard shift search or a standard work week search. This is all done through what we call the scheduler tool. And if you have the daily log, the scheduler will be available to you as well automatically. So the scheduler has two different tabs. So the first one is scheduled items, which is going to give you a list of all the different items that are scheduled to happen. These scheduled items will also appear in the daily log automatically. So if I go into the daily log and I look for stuff from this week, I am going to see, if I select show scheduled items, all those things from the scheduler. Right? These are items that are going to be populated into the daily log as what we call a scheduled item, which is an item that doesn't really exist from a record management perspective until you actually open it and start to fill it out. So we can see scheduled items because they're blue and in italics. But the scheduler is going to create these scheduled items and display them both in the scheduler module and in the daily log. If I want to actually create scheduled tasks that happen on a recurring basis and that they're built automatically, I can do that in the schedules tab of the scheduler. So in this case, what I can do is I can build a new scheduled task, and I can determine what type of scheduled task I want it to be. And we can see there's a number of different categories of scheduled tasks we can build. We can do standalone checklists if you're using the custom checklist module. We can do daily log items. We can do meetings and training records. And we can even do standby if you're doing things like weekly standby or daily standby. So In this case, I could say, for example, create a meetings and training record, call it daily training session. Say this is going to happen daily, starting on a specific date. We can pick when we want this to start. And there's a bunch of different options that you have for determining how this schedule works. You can say weekly on a specific day. You can say monthly on a specific day of the month, or a specific, weekday of the month. I can even customize days on and days off for this, have this happen for 3 days on and then 2 days off, for example. So there's a whole bunch of different ways I can build these scheduled tasks. But in this case, I could say we're going to do this as a daily session every day, but maybe only on weekdays. I can also set these to end on a certain date or after a certain number of occurrences. But in many cases, the tasks in the fire department don't really end ever. So you can just set them as recurring. In this case, I've set up a meetings and training activity, so I can then pull from my meetings and training module to determine exactly what type of activity I want this to be. I can set things like default hours, the station that it's assigned to, and potentially even a physical location. But once I build the schedule, then that scheduled set of tasks is going to start appearing both in my scheduler here, where I can see I now have my daily training sessions that appear, and those will also start to appear in the daily log once I show my scheduled items. So you can see I've got some miscellaneous truck checks and some custom checklists that are scheduled. So if I was, for example, coming in at the beginning of a shift, I can say I have this shift search set as a default, and it's going to give me a list of all the things that are scheduled to happen on the current shift. These are things that are supposed to occur, but they don't actually exist yet from a record management perspective until I go in and say, okay, well, we're actually going to do this checklist. This might be a truck checklist or something like that. I can then fill this out. And once I complete it, the item will now switch to be black. So it is no longer a theoretical item. It is an actual thing that has happened. So I can see this completed checklist in there. I can also associate checklist items with specific other daily log types. So for example, if I have a scheduled truck check here, I can say, all right, well, my standard checklist for this activity, I'm going to add some personnel to it. My standard truck check for this activity is in my list already, so I can pop my checklist right from here. It'll bring up my checklist for me automatically. So that will then associate this checklist with this particular daily log item, so you can see exactly what happened. Now, once you've done a range of different tasks over the course of the day, and what I'll do is I'll switch to a larger time period so we can see it, but say we have then, I won't show scheduled stuff here, is that we might, over the course of a day, have some incidents, have a training session, have other records entered, and the system will then generate a detailed history of everything that happened over the course of the day, both the daily log items and the stuff from other modules. And you can print out what we call a details report from that, where I can say, I want to get a detailed printout of exactly what happened on this shift. And it will then generate for me a detailed breakdown report. And this breakdown report can include an officer signature line if you wanted to have a sign off on that. So it allows you to really quickly generate here's what happened over the course of this particular shift or this time period report. There is also an associated report that deals with what we would call activity time. So in many cases, the daily log is going to be used to give you a pretty detailed breakdown of the amount of time that people have spent on various different tasks. And those tasks can be broken down on an individual person right to specific subtypes of activities. So you can then generate a printed report for activity time, which is actually going to show you exactly how much time was spent on each task, how many staff did it, total numbers of staff hours that were used, and it'll give you a detailed breakout of exactly what everybody did and how much time was spent on various different activities. The activity time report to Excel option will also generate that same report, but in an Excel format if you want to use that in a different way. So there's several different options for that tool. There's also the ability to generate a summary report, and the summary report can even be broken down by individual attendee if you want to. So you can run a summary for what this person did on the shift, or in this case, we can just say, show me what everybody did. So again, it's going to give me a breakdown of exactly how long, what percentage of our time we were spending on these for the summary report. The summary report's also nice because it does include some other information from the other modules in terms of exactly what was happening, inspection events, checklists, public events, a lot of information. Again, basically anything in FirePro that can have a scheduled date associated with it or a specific date associated with it is going to show up in the daily log. And that's going to be public education, alarm tests, fire inspections, training, standby records, incidents. Anything that you enter in any of these other modules will just flow into the daily log, so you have it in a central location where you can reference it all. So it's designed to be pretty automated, pull in this information for you, and then you can generate reports on it or just use it as a tool to manage what is happening over the course of a specific shift or the course of a specific week. So the daily log can function for an individual person or a shift captain as a, what is this supposed to happen on this shift? And here is a list of all the stuff that let's go with this shift. Now let's see exactly what is scheduled to happen at this particular time. If I go next shift, I might see more detailed stuff, right? I've got some scheduled checklists that are supposed to happen. Or I might, as a more administration level user, be looking at, okay, what happened this week? Let's see a detailed breakdown of everything, and get an idea of what scheduled items have been completed yet or which ones have not. So the tool is going to give you a range of options depending on how you want to administer it. But at the largest level, it's designed to be a tool that pulls information from all over FirePro and also can proactively display tasks that need to get completed for you. Do I have any questions about what that module does or how it might apply to your departments? So I should also point out while we're talking that, like most activities in FirePro, if there are associated reminders, we can set it up so that the daily log tool can email out reminders to specific members of the department based on station or squad, so that those associated reminders from the daily log can be sent as an email notification if you wanted to see that in more detail. There is also an export format here where I can pull detailed export logs of daily log activities or attendees and generate them into a really detailed spreadsheet option in addition to the standard reporting tools. So a fair number of different abilities to tweak and export data from the tool. Okay. Is there any parts of this people would like me to go through in a little more detail or a little slower? Or, as I said, specific questions about how this might apply to your department? You can just pop that in the chat or feel free to take yourself off mute.